Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Fireside Chat for the Grateful Giraffes. We're so excited to have Jordana here. She's going to be going over making a 180-degree change in your life, which is something that I think a lot of people are, thinking about. They've gone through their life and they're like, "What's next?" So we're really excited to have Jordana here. Welcome, Jordana.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be here with you, Minling, and just with the giraffes, my community. Feels
Yes. Yes, we're so excited that you are here to share your wisdom. And we would love for you to share a little bit about your story, how, you made a 180 change in your life as well, and why you're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. So making a 180 shift, it's a fundamental change of your life's trajectory by something that you do, usually something that you do. I like to talk about the ones that you do versus the ones that happen to you from a more empowering place. And that tends to happen when the mind and the heart start talking to one another. I think that I lived the first 20 years of my life mostly from my mind, and then my heart and soul caught up with that. And um, and I think that's like for many of us, right? Usually it's around this like Saturn return time that we take a look at things. Um, and so for me, I was living in New York in my 20s, and I was very career focused. I'm a type 3 on the Enneagram, which is the achiever, if anyone knows that. And I was always trying to achieve. And for me, it was about climbing the corporate ladder and making more money and being seen as important. And what better place to be seen as important as being in Los Angeles and being a producer? So in my late 20s, I moved to Los Angeles. I was an executive producer. I had previously been a producer on Nike in New York. I won a lot of prestigious awards. And when I got to LA, I had actually a bit more time. And so I started meditating. I already had this like longstanding yoga practice, but meditation came into my life. And what that did for me is it allowed me to slow down even more. And as my work was, believe it or not, like less crazy in Los Angeles than New York, and being an executive producer, I had more time because I was overseeing a team versus doing the actual production itself. I had this time for myself, and it was not a lot of time, but it was 15 minutes in the morning. And I started realizing that I was defining myself by what I do, and that I felt so misaligned with that. People would ask me what I do. We go out, of course, it's like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? Right? This conversation. And I grew to really hate that conversation because it felt like people were trying to get something out of me. And also that it was like that was who I was. And so knowing that that wasn't true, I would try to figure out, okay, who am I? Um, and could I make a change? So I started actually interviewing a lot of people, like very similar to this, but I would interview people who'd made really big changes in their lives. And I asked them, what did it take from you? Um, you know, what were you doing before? What are you doing now? Are you happy? What were the steps that you took? And I started writing about it. I had this blog at the time. This was about 10 years ago, called Let's Go 180. No longer exists, although I still have all of the archives. Um, and that helped me. I did that over the course of 2 years to get this courage to make a change for myself. And ultimately, the change for me was to just let go. It wasn't to switch into another role. It was to leave what I was doing to live in this space of the question I was asking, who am I if I'm not what I do? So that led me to travel. My first stint of travel, I was gone for 17 months in India, Asia. I was in Nepal. I was in Cambodia, Bali, um, Thailand. And I started studying even more meditation. And then I was asked to teach meditation. And that's when my life really changed. That's when I started doing more of this work that I'm doing now in guiding meditation and coaching. Eventually, I ran my first retreat in the Himalayas of Nepal in 2018 and started doing that every year to help other people in transformations. So that is a short version of the story of my big 180 and the 180 that I help people with today, which is aligning your head and your heart and creating an actionable plan.
I love your story because it is like those small little things that add up, and then it becomes like this ripple effect of a big change. You started with your meditation practice, and then it just grew. And what would you say, like, what would your advice be for somebody that is looking for a change, like in terms of first steps? Because it is very scary. It is something that's really unknown, and everybody's like, okay, I know I could feel something that is brewing inside of me, but I have a comfortable job. I'm making lots of money. I'm, quote unquote, happy enough right now. It's good enough, but I know there's something more. But how would you advise them, and where do you feel like they should start looking and exploring?
Yeah, such a good question. The word that comes up for me is patience. And for that person, I know that person because I am that person. I have been that person. I still am that person. We want to make the change. We're feeling this icky feeling or this misalignment. I want to just do something different. We need to be patient and be where we are. And meditation practice can really help with that because when we sit, we're sitting with the discomfort of, at first, for me, it's like the discomfort of all of the thoughts moving through my mind and then my body aching in this position. And this practice much begins to come up when we become more comfortable with discomfort. And there's this discomfort of being where we are, knowing that we need to make a change, but also knowing that we don't want to just do that change and like rip off a band-aid. Actually, we want to take a look, does that band-aid need to be ripped off? I often refer to like the situation of, and it's not my term, but golden handcuffs when we're in a comfortable job and it's, I've got health insurance, I've got a like reliable salary, I know what I'm going to be doing every day. I might not like what I'm doing every day, but I know, right? And I'm living a comfortable lifestyle. So the first thing I say to people is take a look at those handcuffs. Maybe they're actually these beautiful bangle bracelets. They're not actually chaining you to anything. Can your life actually be working for you? So taking a period of time to ask the question, how can this work for me? Can I make a change right here where I am? Turn these handcuffs into bangles. Notice how that makes me feel. Spend some time with that before I, go off and live on an ashram in India. And by the way, yeah, I did that, but it's painful and it's hard and it's not necessarily necessary. And there were other things that I did before that, and it was looking within and also um, at my work. So I'll just tell you a story quickly because this is part of like the steps. So I was an executive producer, and I'm recognizing that it doesn't feel great for me to be working on the Super Bowl. This is feeling very empty. I don't care about winning another award, but still it matters, right? It matters to other people. And so what can I find within this current situation for me that matters? Okay, so what is it that matters? So in my meditation practice, what matters? What matters? What matters? For me, it was the people, it was my team. So instead of focusing on the Super Bowl product, I started focusing on the career development of everyone on my team and asking them this question, how can I support you? And in that led me to create an educational program within the agency. I ran it for the entire department of 55 people. It actually got written up in Media Post at the time. And I had, in a sense, forged a new career within the current organization I was working in. I was doing learning and development. And so my next step then was to speak to HR and say, look at what we did. Here's the track record. Here's the ROI. I would like to be the head of this department. And so already, like this was a step I was doing. So it could have actually shifted within the organization. It didn't work out for me that way. But again, that was 10 years ago. And, if that had been now, it might have been different because organizations are looking at the internal well-being of employees as a lot more important, putting a lot more value on how we feel within what we do than we were 10 years ago.
I love that advice that you can start with something that you already, have. that's all around you already. And um, for me, I just leaped. So like it's really scary. And what would you say to people that are looking for this change, but then also don't have that support system? Because I feel like support is also important if they don't have family members that agree with it, or if they don't have, the coworkers or the office environment that would agree to the change. Like how do they navigate that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And also, it takes a certain kind of person to just make that bold leap. And it's a bold leap no matter when you make it. But the sooner you make it, the harder it's going to be usually. So it's good to like take this time and to evaluate the current situation and also to do the inner work of meditation. Also, gratitude is like, and we can talk about that too, but gratitude is a huge part of the inner work of being able to make a big change. I didn't have support. So even though I was doing this other program within my organization, I was still doing the other job as an executive producer. It was a lot on my shoulders. So I was essentially doing two jobs at the same time. And when I asked to switch, they said no. My family had always told me, you don't leave a job until you have another one lined up. So what I was thinking about doing was not kosher. The only real support I had were the people that I was speaking to doing this project. So I created that for myself. I was speaking to other people. And I would say, if there's one thing that I would do differently, if I could do it again, is I would have asked one of those people to be my mentor or my coach. Because I had them for the time that I was interviewing them. But then as I went through the process, I didn't have anyone. I just had myself. I would do a lot of reflection practices. But if I had had somebody to check in with on a weekly or a biweekly basis, I think that it would have felt a lot better. I would have been a lot more soothed in my nervous system through some of the chaos that I went through. And as well, I think that, when we've got support and we've got someone who's done something similar, there's a path. And then we can get on that path a bit faster. And again, patience being the thing that most of us in this kind of situation need to work on. We're going to be impatient even when we're in the journey. When we're doing what we said we wanted to do, which is leave that job and doing something different, the impatience will come back. It will still be there. So it helps to shorten that trajectory to have someone who's done it before, as well as to like soothe the heart and the soul and the mind.
That's such a good point about like the impatience as well. First of all, I love how you created your own community to give you that your own environment of that, which is why I feel like this community is so great because there's a lot of entrepreneurs and like finding a mentor is also very important. But I want to go into that impatience because I think that is something that we all have to deal with. How do you deal with that, and what do you recommend for people that are feeling that pull but they feel like they're in the in between state and just really wanting to jump and like but knowing that they need to be patient and let everything unfold and to take a little bit more time in that journey? What do you give, what kind of advice would you give those people?
Yeah, there's a lot of exercises that we can do just for that. Um, the question I ask myself is like, how can I slow down? Um, Here's a great example for Los Angeles. Drive slow and get behind the person who's driving slow. And while you're driving behind that person who's driving a little bit too slow on the 10 West, just breathe and say, I've got all the time that I need. Walk behind someone who's walking slow. Don't try to pass them. Like these just like little like physical, they're actual physical practices we can do to train the mind. Um, And then that also makes meditation easier too. Again, so meditation, sitting, just being with whatever comes up, it's okay. I also like talking to myself. And actually I began my meditation journey by speaking to myself. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I was guiding myself in meditation, saying the words that I felt I needed to hear. And this is a way that we self-soothe when we're in a state of impatience or fight, flight, or just tension, ickiness, distress, to speak to ourselves like we would a small child, the small child within us. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to make a decision now. Or, hey, I'm with you. I got you. We're doing this together. Whatever that may be, we can start to grow patience. And then I'll pull in gratitude here because this was a huge part of the practice that I was doing every day before work. I'm going to work and I don't like my work anymore. I have reached this point. I'm talking to all of these people who've done these 180 changes and thinking, wow, they're going to lunch in the middle of the day at Cafe Gratitude, and then they're going off to, and I wasn't. I was like, had to get to work at a certain time and be there for, 7, 8, 9 hours, 10 hours, however long that day was going to go. um, I practiced gratitude every morning. And the way that I did that, it wasn't just thinking about what I was grateful for, it was writing it down. And that was very, very important, was to be journaling what I was grateful for every morning and then bringing that practice of gratitude and appreciation into my day. So I made sure every day that I spoke to at least 3 different people and told them what I appreciated about them or what they were doing so that I was expressing it out loud, which helped me to enjoy my work more. Because when you appreciate the people around you, they'll begin to appreciate you more. And then you're in appreciation. So rather than being in disdain or feeling like, oh, I'm wasting my time, I'm lifting people up and I'm appreciating and I'm starting to actually see the good, the silver lining, the gold lining of where I'm at and what I'm doing.
Those are beautiful practices, just to have every day. And it's like shifting your perspective out of like the negative aspects of your life and into the positive aspect of your life, even if you're not doing something different. I think that has like a profound change and difference in, your body chemistry and your like psychological chemistry as well. And I love that those were like the beginning practices so that you could see like another pathway, another opening, another direction that you can take. And I really love Greg's question, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it. How do you deal with transition? We've all been through these paths that make sense. Then you transition into the unknown. It's challenging, confusing, difficult, and lonely.
Mhm. It is all of those things, big time. Um, And actually, it's what we were just talking about. So, starting those practices before you're going through the transition, we do them in times that are hopefully good or at least better, where we can learn to practice, where we can create a routine of mental and physical well-being so that the transitions, which are hard, they're lonely, they're scary, they're uncertain, we've got something that we've been doing that is training our minds, it's training our body, it's training our heart so that we can take on more. We can take on a little bit more life, a little bit more feeling, a little bit more uncertainty. It's always here, but when we're actually actively choosing it, knowing it's, okay, I'm doing this for down the line, but right now in it, there's a fire. Okay, but I have my gratitude practice. I know that if I appreciate 3 people today, that's going to like lift me up too. I've been experiencing that and I'm going to keep doing that and experiencing that.
Yeah, it's all about the practice. It's like it's doing, like you said, it's doing it beforehand, becomes muscle memory, and then you don't get into those lows as much. You can pull yourself out, and it's so much easier to shift and transition in that way. So I love that advice as well. I would love to talk a little bit about, building up the courage to actually make that leap. And like, what did you do to like, boost yourself up to actually make that transition, whether it's getting stuff ready on the physical level, like your finances, or maybe it's just words that you told yourself, like to like reaffirm that this was the right path and that you're going to be safe and that you're, going to succeed. Like, what are the things that you actually put into practice to give yourself that courage to jump forward?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question. And the internal work has to be there first. That's the first step. So making sure that we have the practices in place. But in order to have that courage and to make a bold change, real there's some real like work in the physical world that has to happen too, because that then helps the emotional centers to feel like, okay, yes, I can handle this. And like the number one thing I looked at was, where are my finances at right now? Like, can I actually afford to do what I want to do next? And for me, that was tough because I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And then, it's two different things, right? So if you know, like, I want to pursue this, you can budget out. And actually, even if you don't know what you want to do, I know that I want to take a certain amount of time to figure out what I want to do next. And for me, I knew that I wanted to take at least 6 months to a year to just be in this space in between. And so what I did was I took a look at how much money am I spending every month? And it was something that I hadn't been looking at previously. I was to be fair, I was an executive producer. I was making more money than I could spend every month. So I felt like this is so great. I can just put everything on these cards and they're going to pay themselves off. And I don't even know what I'm spending money on. So I had to go back and just analyze my credit card and analyze, everything. And actually if you have Microsoft Word, there's an Excel spreadsheet that does this really beautifully. And I really like the Microsoft Office like free spreadsheets. I made my own, but I recently discovered that they have one. You don't have to like create one. But basically, like you need a budget. What are my daily expenses? And then even as I think about moving into this state of transition, what are my non-negotiables? Like I have to, if I'm staying in my house, I have to keep the lights on in my house. What's my average electricity bill? What's my phone bill? If I was getting health insurance from an employer before, now I'm going to have to pay for it on my own. What's the cost of that going to be? Um, if I'm going to be traveling, how much money do I want to be spending traveling? And then seeing what that looks like each month. If I have a house payment, a car payment, all of those things. I also still wanted to be saving a little bit of money every month. So I put that into my budget as well. And then an emergency fund. So we need to then have padding on top of that. For me, I did 30% padding. So let's say I'm doing this for like really easy math. This was not my budget, but let's say $10,000 was your monthly budget. You would want it to be 13,000. So for 6 months, now I really don't want to do this math in my head. It would be for 6 months of time, it would be 60,000 plus 3,000 a month, which would be another 18,000. So it would be $78,000 you would need if you had this period of 6 months that I just want to live in this question and my budget, I need $10,000 a month plus my emergency, and then whatever is next. So that was really important to me. And it's called a runway. So the runway that you have between this and whatever the next destination is, having that padding so that you can do what you want to do, you can explore. For me, it was traveling. And actually, my expenses were less because I wanted to travel to Asia, where the cost of living is a little bit lower, but I wanted to be studying. So I had to take into account that doing a breathwork training and doing a meditation training and doing a yoga training was this amount of money, and to factor that in. And then even when I didn't know, for months 5 and 6, I put in a budget for learning and education every month. And so then you see, do I have that now? Do I have that $78,000 that I think I need in order to take this leap? If I don't have it, okay, how much am I saving now? Because we've looked at the budget, we see what's coming in, we see what's going out. How much am I saving? Okay, if I'm saving 5,000 a month, then it's going to take me over a year, right? I'm going to need to do this for a year. And then from there, like whether it's I've already got what I need, or maybe I need to close the gap and it's going to take me this amount of time. What I do is my planned DOE, date of escape. Okay. So, so now I know that like it's going to take me until this time to get this amount of money, or I already have it, but I put that date on the calendar. And I do that for a couple of reasons. I do that like one, because it brings me hope. It helps me to like even appreciate each day even more. And then two, to hold me accountable, right? I decided I really want to do this, the date is there. You don't absolutely have to do the date, by the way. Like I also like want to make space for you could change your mind, but this is ideally in the space of I've already spent probably about 3 months doing this internal work, shifting things around. Maybe like you were like me and you changed your job within your job and you then proposed it to HR and you said, I want to make this change. And they said, no. And so then you take a look and you decide, okay, I am going to make this change and I do have the runway and this is going to be my DOE.
This is like the advice that I wish I had when I first moved a transition because I was a little bit more reckless in that. So having a cash runway is definitely like, something that's really good to make sure that you have enough space to do all the exploration that you need to do or you want to do and to even start that new journey. I would love to like transition into this part about, okay, like you've made the change. And of course, there's going to be more like ups and downs and challenges. How do you get through those challenges? What did you do? What challenges came up for you, and what did you do to overcome it? Because I think that's also important to see what's on the other side or what potentially could be on the other side for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. I will tell you about my first day in India. Um, and so again, I did 2 years of work on myself internally and externally in order to make this change. And that was after, 9 years of working in the corporate world and rising up to a certain level of success. And I'm pretty bold like Humanling and decided to just like I'm gonna, you know what? I did it. I'm gonna go to India now because that's a place where I'm going to learn. I'm going to put myself on an ashram and I'm going to study yoga there. The website and the actual experience, talk about a 180. It was like nothing. So I arrived to India after, 24 hours of traveling and I've like committed to being at this place. And it is very close to the airport. There's loud planes overhead. There's the garden that looked like it was expansive is smaller than like the backyard that I grew up in suburban New Jersey. And my room doesn't have any windows. The walls are just like full of dirt. Um, and it's really, really hot. And there's like ants crawling everywhere. And I was just not great about it. I'm coming from like white bread world, to be honest. And then I go there. It was really extreme. Um, and for some reason, I wasn't expecting that. I put myself to sleep that night and I woke up in the middle of the night afraid of the dark. Like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid of the dark. I run, I turn the lights on, I realize where I am. I freak out, I turn the lights back off. I realize I'm afraid of the dark again out of nowhere. And then I understand that I'm going through a panic attack. And I want to be so real about this. I knew what it was because I'd had one once before, but this can come up. These anxiety attacks, even panic attacks can come up when we make these big changes. Um, and at that moment in time, I was stuck in it and I was going through this cycle and it was terrible. And I had to go through that, I guess, for my personal journey. I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I went through because it was a day and a half of like in and out of panic, not being able to breathe, just trying to crawl myself out of it. Eventually, what got me out was realizing that I didn't need to be where I was. Like I had choice, which seems like, of course you did, but I didn't feel that I did. I felt like I was stuck there, that I couldn't leave if I wanted to leave, that it was all quite scary. Um, and so later, when I had another panic attack, in the moment of it was a near panic attack, actually. It was a near panic attack in 2020. When the pandemic hit, I was in Thailand. And I had 24 hours before the airports were going to shut down. I was sitting with myself and I realized that my heart rate was speeding up and um, that my breathing was speeding up and that I was moving towards this anxiety attack. And that's when I started talking to myself. And I said, you don't have to make a decision right now. You have 24 hours. It's okay. And just being able to speak to myself and letting myself know these are the choices you can make. You actually like, even though like you need to make a choice, like you can make this choice, like knowing that you can make this choice, even the choice to wait. Um, soothed me enough so that I could get the into my cognitive abilities to make a good choice. So now I'm like even forgetting what your question was. Oh, some of the hiccups that can come along. Anxiety attacks. I just wanted to like put that out there. Anxiety attacks can come up. Um, I had a mentor by the time the second one came up as well, who I spoke with, and that also really, really helped me. So having people like who know what's going on with you, who you're like tuning in with, not just like every now and then, but on a regular, consistent basis is going to be helpful. The other thing that I really wasn't prepared for was even though I had this runway, I was so used to making money. And all of the thoughts that came up for me about my worth and my value because I was no longer making this six-figure income. I had to deal with all of that. And so just like knowing that like this stuff is going to come up and we've just got to be really kind to ourselves in the process. Be kind. And if you feel like you want to be still doing something to make money, if you're doing what I did, where you're taking this time in this space, then do that. There's nothing wrong with having like a side hustle and creating some income for yourself. You might discover that that side hustle opens doors to something else, and maybe you're not putting like all of your lifeblood needs coming from this side hustle, but you're designing earrings and you love designing earrings. And then it turns into a fashion line or it turns into an introduction or it takes you to another country. You just never know. So understanding like what comforts you need and that everybody's journey is different as well. There's not like all of the things that I'm sharing with you. These helped me and they're basics, right? But we've got to kind of tweak it so that it works for each of us because we're all very different beings at the end of the day with different desires and goals for our life.
Those are important hiccups to look out for sure, because we'll always second guess ourselves and we'll always be like, did we do the right thing? And like, and have those attacks. And I know I went through my own panic attacks, and I think it was more related to like the income as well too. Where was it going to come from? And because I didn't have that cash runway, or as much of a cash runway that I wanted. And I love how you mentioned that people can look at side hustles and starting to make income. How would you recommend people besides side hustles to generate income or for their new business? And how did you do that? How did you figure out what you were good at and start to make your purpose, your passion, your actual job? And now in this case, because that's what you do now.
Yeah. Listening. And again, the listening comes from like this meditation practice, but I was listening to the world around me and I was listening to what people were asking me to do or asking for from me. And I went through a period of just saying yes to all of that. And so what that looked like in the beginning was I actually started an agency doing social media strategy right after I left my corporate job. And it was just saying yes. And at first, that was really exciting for me. And it was something to sink my teeth into. I got asked by eBay to be their keynote speaker at their national conference in Vegas. So that was this very exciting yes. I loved doing it. There was a huge thrill. It opened up a lot of doors, but I also then realized that I didn't want those doors to be opened. So then I kind of went back to the drawing board. I closed up that social media strategy shop. I did some experiences. I think I went to Lightning in a Bottle and Burning Man. I went to Summit at Sea. Uh, and then I decided that I wanted to try running a retreat. So I ran my first retreat in 2016 in Joshua Tree, just a local retreat. I think 5 women signed up, and I really enjoyed doing that. And so that gave me a little bit more information. Um, and then I started doing more of those kinds of things, right? But then even as I was traveling, I had decided that, okay, I want to go to India and I want to learn. Um, I was asked to teach meditation. And, I had a lot of like practice in yoga and I had done several trainings there. And I was asked to teach this group meditation and there was no one else to do it. So I did. And then I learned more, and I kept getting asked to do these other things. So I started doing that. I kept learning. That's another thing. And for me, like when I learn the best, I'm also sharing. So I was naturally kind of looking for those opportunities, but I was also being asked. So it was this like snowball effect of like learning and asking. Also just following what we like, following like what's exciting for you and me. And I brought that like earring design example up because when I was in India, I designed a pair of earrings for myself just for fun and wore them around. And so many women were complimenting them that I decided to go back to that place in India on my travels. And I had 150 pairs made. And then I started selling them. And I sold out of those earrings actually like quite fast. And to this day, like I wear those earrings and people ask me if they can buy them or where they came from. And it was, it's no longer a side hustle for me. It was something that I just enjoyed doing. But at that time, when I wasn't doing anything else, making $50 on a pair of earrings was pretty good money. When they cost me very little to make. So again, it's like listening to the environment. What am I being asked to do? Saying yes, especially like if you feel a little bit like, ooh, I could do that, but maybe there's like even this like nervous feeling. That's a good feeling. You should go for it. Push you past that. And then also, if you are seeing things that you're just gravitating towards for yourself anyway, and you want to learn or expand in that way, that's also a sign. Do that. See where that goes. Maybe you just have a beautiful pair of earrings, or maybe there's 150 women out there, or actually women and men, who are going to be wearing those earrings and feeling as beautiful as you do when you wear them.
I love how you said to listen to like the environment because it's so easy to, and I think I dealt with this, not realizing your own talents or what you're capable of. And like when people ask you for it, they see that within you. And that's, of course, why they are going to be asking. But sometimes it's like, oh, that's just so easy. Like, oh, anybody can do this. When in fact, no, not everybody can do those things. And that's why they're specifically asking you. So I really, really love that advice. What would you say around like failures? Because I know like on this journey of making a change, this entrepreneurial path, sometimes we go in the wrong direction, and maybe it's for lessons that we needed to learn. But there are failures that potentially can come. And so, how did you deal with those types of failures and also pivot again? Because it's also I feel like when we make this change, it's not just one big change, it's a lot of mini pivots as you're discovering yourself. So how did you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, like the 180 change is just these steps along the way. It's knowing the next right step, and then the next right step, and then the next right step. I have a vision of where I think I want this to go, but just taking the next right step, then I'm also leaving this in the hands of, God or universe creator, an energy that is greater than that within myself, whatever it is that we may have some faith in, that there's something beyond what I can imagine for myself that is possible. So this mindset is really, really important. I think that failure is when I get attached to an idea of how something is supposed to go, and there's the grief of it not going the way that I thought it was supposed to go. Um, and that's really, it's like a beautiful learning, and it hurts. And it makes the next failure a lot easier when I go through it. But also just to me, it's all perspective, and looking at it not necessarily as a failure, but as a redirection. Um, Trusting my life is a big one. And at one point in time, I was so done with living in India, being barefoot in the ashram, having like my skin dry up, and just feeling like I want to be back in Venice Beach and drink Erewhon smoothies. I did. I wanted comfort. And I had a company reach out to me. It was a big yoga company, and they were looking for a vice president. And I was like this needle in a haystack for them because I had all of this experience in media and production. I was a yogi. I was in India. and I made it to the final rounds of interviews. And I thought I was going to get it. We were negotiating my new six-figure salary. And at the end of the day, they actually said, "We feel you're too creative for this role, and we're going to demote it and give it to someone else." And I had been preparing to leave India. I was so ready, let me wrap this up. I was like starting to explore other places. I even like dropped out of the training I was doing early because I was like getting ready to have to fly back and be like in Hollywood again. And it was such a bummer. Like I was just like, I couldn't, I was flabbergasted. Like this was supposed to happen this way. I was supposed to get out of this discomfort. Um, and actually, there was a woman I was at another ashram at the time, and she said, "You have to trust your life." And that gave me such solace, because then I started asking myself, well, what's really true? What's really true for me? And in asking that question, actually knew that I wanted to go to Nepal, and I hadn't made it yet to Nepal. There was something about this country that I knew I had to get there, and I wanted to hike Annapurna. And I actually wanted to spend a bit more time in India and get off the ashrams and see what it was like in the cities. And so I got really excited planning all of the things that I could do now that I didn't have to go back and be a vice president, that I was just Jordana traveling. And that changed my life. That was such a huge change for me because when I eventually went to Nepal, I thought it was going to be 3 months later, but there were other twists and turns on the journey. It ended up being a whole year later. Um, I actually led a retreat to Annapurna Base Camp. So not only did I get to go and experience that for the first time, but I brought a group of people with me. And it was to date, like that was the best moment of my life, was being in Nepal, feeling so on purpose and having this group of people who trusted me, who were all having this beautiful heart-opening experience at Annapurna Base Camp. And none of that would have happened if I hadn't failed at, getting that job. And it was a failure, by the way, because there were a lot of things I could have said in that interview to be who they needed me to be. But I didn't want to do that. I had a vision, and I wanted to only do that job if this vision could move forward in the world. Um, and so it is as it is. And so this is the story, right? Now I get to go back to Nepal every year and work with the same people. My whole living room looks like Nepal. It's filled with singing bowls that I've imported, and that I know a family there, and I support their business in Nepal of curating these bowls, and it's such a huge part of my life. So while yoga didn't become part of my life in the way of I won't say exactly what they were doing with yoga, but in that media way, it became a part of my life in my personal practice, and the yoga, the union of connecting with others and with people in that part of the world where yoga originates, has its roots. Um, and it looks all different ways. And for me, it looks like getting to go back to that place and having a little bit of that place right here in Santa Monica.
Yeah, there's a lot of key points in what you just shared that I really loved about trusting your life, because we can forget that like God, source, whatever we want to call it, has a bigger plan that we cannot see for ourselves. And that redirection was like the perfect redirection for the what your purpose was, and like your next phase, and going to such a special country. We've talked about Nepal lots of times, but it's one of my favorite countries as well. And I would love for anybody in the audience to ask any questions, posted in the chat as well. But in the meantime, you know, what would you like? What is like the one big advice that you would give somebody that is on the cusp of making this change? I know we talked about a lot of things, but what is like the one thing that you want them to take away around their journey, around how to approach it, any of those things?
Yeah. There are no mistakes. Just there are no mistakes, right? Like There's no mistake. There's no mistake if you stay. There's no mistake if you make the change. There's no mistake in how long it takes for you to make the change, or how, if you do decide to just rip the Band-Aid off, it's fine. It's okay. Like, you're going to make your way. Know that we, as humans, we're resilient, and we can be resilient, and we'll learn and we'll grow with no matter what is thrown in our direction, or what we throw in our own direction. So just to trust that. And the tactical things again are, do the work, do the internal work, find someone who's done it before, have a mentor, have a support system around you. Try to get your finances in order too, right? Those are the things.
Those are all really great advice, especially the one about there not being a mistake, because we couldn't forget that. And we overanalyze and we also like try to be perfect and everything. And I actually want to ask a question about the overanalyzation because I think that's like something that a habit that we can get into like is this the right move, is it the right not the right move? And I know we talked about there is no mistake, but how does somebody get out of that overanalyzation? It's one thing to just be like, okay, I know that there's no mistakes, but then your mind still keeps on going and try to like figure it out before you make that leap. And how would you advise somebody to overcome that?
Yeah. Um, this question, how is it helping me to believe those thoughts? Right? How is it helping me? How is it hurting me to believe those thoughts? Both of those questions, right? Because when I realized that, and it's easier for some people than others too, like really, like also say, like, have so much compassion for yourself if um the mind is just going in loops and loops and loops. And also if I can't even, if I think that it's benefiting me, actually it is, but it's always benefiting, by the way. Those loops are always benefiting and hurting, right? So it's like, is it going to hurt you enough? Are you going to realize that it's hurting you enough that you can come over here, right? Of course, it's helping you because it's helping you be comforted. It's a mind state you love being in. And also, like, yeah, there's a certain amount of analyzation that is helpful so that I don't do something like that again, or what do I want to learn from this? But like, once I do, let's move on. Let's keep going. There's a whole life for me to live that's not in my mind, that's not circling again and again and again. And it can sometimes take someone else to help get you out of this. I really believe in having a team around me. All of my best friends, by the way, are therapists and coaches, which I think is just, it's hilarious. It's almost like no luck or chance. But before it was, or is that like that way for you too, Minling? Yeah. Like, it's like so good. It's like this like sacred circle of best friends who just, I can go to. But I do also have, my own therapist and my own coach. And I've had different coaches throughout. And by the way, they're all like my best friends now too. It's just like, I'm like, you're so good at what you do. I'm gonna pay you. And now we're best friends. But it's so helpful to have that. It's so needed. I want to answer like one question that I get asked a lot. No one is asking me this here. It's kind of a mean question. So I'm going to ask myself and then share the answer. The mean question is, would you go back? Like, would you ever go back to being in corporate? Would you go back to being a producer? People used to ask me this all the time. Um, and it really like frustrated me in the beginning of my journey. Um, because I didn't know the answer actually, and I wanted to say no, and they wanted me to, oh, you would never do that again, would you? Um, and the answer today is absolutely, I would absolutely go back. Um, I'm not planning on doing that, but if that is what life presented me with, then that's what I'm saying yes to. If my life circumstances came to a place and point where I would want to go back and be an executive producer at an ad agency, I would absolutely say yes to it. And I think I would really enjoy it.
Wow. I love that. It's It's interesting because I'm like asking myself that question. I was like, no, heck no. So there's resistance. But I like the way that you said it. It's like if that's what life was presenting you as the next opportunity, it's staying open to all of those opportunities and not knowing what that could also you too, and um I guess another question that I had that's coming up from what you just shared is how do you heal through some of the relationships that you've had around your past job or past career path? Because I think that's also important. Like your answer is completely different than mine. Maybe I'm like, maybe I haven't healed through that of like that experience. Did you do some work to release that as well?
Yeah, for sure. Um, yes, and it came out, and a lot of it came out in meditation. I remember specifically, I mean, it was so hard for me to leave. Um, and also there were things going on that weren't great and that were suppressing my soul, my voice, and that I didn't have the courage to speak up about at that time. And perhaps I wouldn't, like that I wouldn't want to go back into. But there was a meditation that I did in India, a laughing meditation. Um, and we had to laugh for 30 minutes. It was at the Osho meditation resort in Pune, India. And you go into this like really large auditorium, 400 people in this space, and they put on this music and you're on a yoga mat and everybody just starts laughing and it's like 30 minutes of laughing. And at first it's like, okay, I was laughing a bit. And then it was really difficult. Well, how am I going to keep laughing? And what I had to go through in my mind, the stories that I had to like visit to get that laugh to keep going, I started to heal from the previous job I was in, and celebrate that I had walked out the door and celebrated in laughter. And so that was a really powerful practice for me. It was like, again, so uncomfortable. I now teach like a laughing meditation, and I have one that's even like 1 minute long that people have so much trouble doing. Um, and imagine like 30 minutes of that. So just like there are these practices that are so good for us that can bring up a lot. And that's just one example. There's like, inner child work that we can do. Whatever you're called to, family constellation work that can be done. You can do a family constellation around, your old workplace. A family constellation isn't necessarily work of your family, but just of constellations of people or events. There's really like a lot of modalities out there. I've continued to spend all of this time researching these modalities for myself and for clients. And there is something for everyone, and trying it out with an open mind, being curious, and open to what it can bring. Because I just had no idea that a 30-minute laughing meditation could be the moment nearly a year later that I would be celebrating that I walked out the doors of that ad agency.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to try that laughter yoga. I don't know if I could do it for 30 minutes though. That's like intense. I might have to start with your like 1 minute laughing meditation
Send
to
it to
do
you.
that, to just like get over like I guess like the self-talk and the judgment of myself going through it.
1 minute is really, really powerful to just keep going for 1 minute.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordana. This has been such an amazing fireside chat. I would definitely recommend anybody, to reach out to her. She's in our WhatsApp group. If they have any questions. And I just appreciate you sharing so vulnerably your story, your wisdom with us, and hopefully inspires more people to take that leap if that's something that they desire, and help them with this leap and have it be more of a smoother path than some of the rest of us who just jumped right in without having a plan. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It's a pleasure to be here, and an honor.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we have a lot of thank yous coming in. Thank you so much for sharing. This was very helpful. Thank you to you, Jordana. We really appreciate you. We'll be on for our next fireside chat and next week. So we'll see you there. Bye, everyone. Thank
Uh,
you.
Bye.